Studio time with Ducky.
Okay, welcome to the very first studio time with Ducky. I thought today we could do vocal processing. A lot of people asked for that, and I thought we could do my new song Oceans, which is the second track off of my new EP, I Fall in Love with Everyone I Meet. So let's just jump right in. So I have my vocal channel here.
Hey, can you find your way home now? I've been circling the block. I've been dreaming of you doing things I couldn't tell you to me.
Cool. So let's see. Let's just go in. I'm going to turn off everything so you can hear what it sounds like dry. And I got to tell you, vocalists hate doing this. I hate listening to my dry vocals. I'm definitely not the best singer. I'm just pretty good at vocal processing. So, we're just going to listen to it for a second.
Hey, can you find your way home now? I've been circling the block.
Yikes. Okay, so let's just get started. So I have, my first thing that I do is just an EQ. I gotta say, I usually don't like the Ableton stock EQ. It's not linear phase, so it can introduce phase distortion. But for some reason, sometimes I like it on my vocals. So yeah, and I want to say, like, there really are no rules. Like, it's helpful to know the rules, right? But that's so you know when and how to break the rules. And at the end of the day, if it sounds good to you, man, cool. So yeah, I basically just cut everything below 100 and then I boosted around 4.5K, which is pretty standard. The sweet spot for vocals is usually between 4 and 5K. So yeah, very simple.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
So it doesn't sound much better. We're just cleaning it up and boosting what's good a little bit. So then I have a compressor, and it's funny, I usually don't use the Ableton stock compressor either, but I guess I was really feeling like Ableton stock stuff when I was writing Oceans. Whatever. So I have a pretty high ratio and a very low threshold, but a lot of that is because my signal was just so low because I really wasn't using good preamps. So it's actually just barely catching it. And then I have a very quick attack and a super fast release. I always do this about this setting for vocals. I was taught in audio engineering school that with vocals, you can basically only do damage with release. And of course, it's just about what sounds good, but that's like a rule of thumb to me.
Hey, can you find your way home now? I've been circling the block.
So it doesn't sound amazing, but it does sound more present. So then we have a de-esser, which does exactly what it sounds like. It takes away the S's. So you can see I'm really slamming it. Below, I have the threshold to -32. I have the frequency at about 9K. I have a pretty high voice, if you haven't noticed. So my sibilance is very high as well. And it can get very harsh. So I just have a high pass. Everything above that is getting, boop, slammed down. And we're not going to hear much of an effect right now.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
So now it's going to get good. Now I have Nectar, and I love Nectar. Isotope, if you're watching, please sponsor me. I'm going to turn off everything I did so you can hear. I started with pitch correction, and I have the speed just at 0, which means it kicks in right away.
Can you find your way home now?
So that sounds way better. And I'm also pitching up the formant just one step. I'm shifting it. And formant shifting is complicated in the way that they actually do it. But the effect that it has is kind of like pitching it up without transposing it. So you're not changing the key, but it sounds either higher or lower if you shift it down. And you can actually hear what it sounds like because I automated it in this track. So here's with it shifted down. Here's with it shifted even higher. And here's just shifted 1.
Hey, can you find your way home now? I've been circling the block.
And I'm sorry if there's any clipping or anything. I'm still figuring out my recording setup, but we're gonna get it perfect. So there's pitch, and then I have a second round of compressors with parallel compression. I have an optical one, which has its like own ratio, and then I have the slower attack, slower release, and a lighter threshold. And then I have a, come on buddy, oh, vintage one, with a harsher ratio, a lower threshold, a even slower attack, and then slow release. And I can get more into compression in a different video, but basically compression is a selective attenuator, right? So that means that like it lowers the volume when you tell it to, by how much you tell it to, like based on these parameters: ratio, attack, and release. And they're useful for a couple of reasons. First of all, they increase presence. They're really good for like making something sound forward in a mix, because when you have that selective attenuation, what it does to your ear is you think that the softer parts are louder, because they are relatively, because you're bringing down those peaks, right? You're evening everything out, and then your ears can hear the whole thing, so it sounds more forward and in your face. And it's cool. It's a really important tool in mixing down. And then I have kind of a wonky EQ. I just wanted to do like a scoop and then really boost that like nice 5K range. Then I have another de-esser because I'm boosting the brightness of my vocals a lot, and sibilants can get really harsh, so you gotta do something to compensate. So if we listen back now.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
So it's a lot more present. It's got a lot more character. Obviously the pitch sounds way better, and it has that nice, very like processed sound that I like. Then I added some saturation just for more character and warmth.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
Then a delay. And I'm pretty conservative with feedback and with the wetness, which is the amount of processed signal.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
And it's an analog delay, and it's quarter note dotted. So then I actually added a little bit of distortion, not to get a distorted effect, but more just for like warmth, character, and loudness.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
And then lastly, I added a reverb. And I do want to point out that I always high pass my reverb. I think it's really important for keeping your mix from getting muddy. You can see I just took the super highs down a tiny bit too.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
So now we're really cooking. And then I have one more EQ. And this is just, again, I'm bringing down those lows where there's no information and clearing out that space for my low end, and then really boosting that brightness. This time I'm trying to get that air.
Hey, can you find your way home now?
So it's super present and it's super airy, right? But it's a little bit harsh. So then I have another EQ. And this is the EQ I actually really like to use, the FabFilter Pro Q2. So again, I'm just cutting out those lows. EQing is really helpful for mixing down, just to create space for your elements, and really thinking about like what sits where. I have a high voice. There's nothing in the bass range in my voice. We can just cut it out. And then I'm cutting off all these super, super highs, right? Because I really boosted that brightness and that airiness, and now I'm trying to kind of tame it while keeping the stuff that I want.
Hey, can you find your way home now? I've been circling the block.
Oh, and something that I forgot to show you that I really wanted to, let's go back to Nectar. So I actually automated a couple of parameters besides the formant shifting. I automated the wetness of the reverb and the feedback of the delay.
I don't know if I make any sense.
So you can watch it here with the delay, watch the feedback.
I don't know if I make any sense, but I think
And I think it just has this effect of like opening it up. I think automation is really important to continue like movement and make sure things aren't stagnant. And I really wanted that effect of just like boom, this big moment, right? Just kind of like emotional effects and like filling the space, and that's the effect that it has to me. So let's carry on. The last thing that I did was I added a variable mood compressor. This is a UAD plugin, so it's using digital signal processing to emulate analog gear. And variable mood compressors are like really interesting if you have an analog one. I think it does some crazy stuff with like the AC and DC currents, using one to like limit the other. And I believe it uses a tube to limit, and it's a high gain, low distortion tube. But someone can fact check me on that because I'm not sure. And so, yeah, the effect that it ends up having is kind of this variable ratio, like kind of akin to a soft knee with a compressor, whereas like the signal is getting hotter, the ratio is increasing on its own, and it's a really cool effect. And I will say it's actually not standard to use these on vocals. You would typically use more of like an opto compressor, I believe, which is like a LA2A. But I like the way it sounds, so who cares? And you can see I'm really slamming it. I put the threshold all the way down. I have a very fast attack and a very fast release. So really what I'm trying to do is just slam those peaks down. I want it super under control. So let's listen to what it sounds like.
Hey, can you find your way home now? I've been circling the block.
Yeah, so that's it. That's how I process my vocals for Ocean. For Oceans. I should say, you know, I don't process my vocals the exact same every time, of course, but like EQ, compression, strong de-essing, and then I usually do use Nectar. Those are like the foundation of my chain for every single time I process vocals. If you're curious, I record through an Apollo 8, and I have a blue baby bottle microphone. But you really don't need like amazing equipment to make something sound cool, you know, like Ableton is super powerful, and I think it's a really cool creative exercise to take something that's not like the highest quality or like this professional studio recording and still make it sound like really good. Because there's a lot you can do, and it's just supposed to be fun. Yay! So thank you so much for tuning in to the very first studio time with Ducky. Let me know what else you want to see and learn, and I'm gonna make a bunch more of these. Yay! Okay, that's it. Bye.